Hello professional students, welcome to Starry Academy. This is a comprehensive video lectures on the subject matter of economics. So in this particular session, what we intend to look at is to look at the broader view of the subject matter of economics, vis-a-vis the micro and the macro aspect. So we are going to look at a number of topics here, or all relevant topics in relation to economics. So let's begin with chapter 1. And this chapter 1 is basically centered on the nature and scope of economics. So we have chapter 1, which is said to be centered on the nature and scope of economics. So let's look at the nature and scope of economics. So what we are trying to look at here under the nature and scope of economics is to look at the definitions that have been given to economics over time by different scholars of economics, and likewise a number of other associated issues like the basic concept of economics. So all these are actually found within the purview of the nature and scope of economics. So we are going to begin with definitions and scope of economics. Let's begin with definitions of economics. Though in the real sense of it, we have different meanings and definitions that have been attributed to the subject matter of economics. This therefore shows that economics simply means different things to different people. And we have a number of economists too who have equally propounded or given one or two definitions to the subject matter of economics. They have been able to do this based on their individual perspective, economic experience, and other ideological orientations. So in order to have a good understanding of the basis and importance of economics, it is pertinent to consider the definitions of economics which have been propounded by various scholars of economics, both in economics as well as other disciplinary background. But it's sufficient to say that it has not been particularly easy to give a straight and completely satisfactory definitions of economics. This is because of the fact that the subject matter of economics has been interpreted differently, and as a matter of fact, it simply means different things to different people. So due to the fact that, like we have said, it is considered to be relatively difficult to give a precise and concise definitions of economics. So as a matter of fact, we are going to make attempt to review a number of definitions that have been given over time to economics. And to do this, the numerous definitions of economics can be broadly categorized into four. That is, there are four major perspectives upon which the subject matter of economics has been defined. We have the classical view or perspective, we have the neoclassical view, we have the scarcity definition view, and we have that of working definitions. These are the four major categories upon which the subject matter of economics has been broadly defined. So once again, we have the classical view, we have the neoclassical view, we have the scarcity definition of economics, and we have the working definitions of economics. So for proper understanding of what economics is all about, we are going to look at each of these categories one after the other in order to appreciate the genuine effort of the scholars or economists who have propounded one or two definitions in relation to economics. So let's begin with the classical. And before we do that, we also need to look at some definitions under each category and subsequently place emphasis on scarcity definitions, as such is regarded as the most acceptable definition of economics. So let's begin with the classical view of economics. When we talk about the classical view, we are talking about the view on economics which have been expressed by the classical economist. The classical economist in this case was simply regarded as the earliest or the first generation economists, in the sense that they are the first to have documented the totality of the economic thought in full scale. And we have this particular view championed by the father or the acclaimed father of economics in person of Adam Smith. So simply put, the classical view of economics is just view, or they are regarded as those opinions which are being expressed by the classical economists, that is, the earliest or the first generation economists. These are the first economists to have documented their thoughts on economic activities of various countries. So according to the classical economics, economics can be seen as an inquiry into the nature and causes of the wealth of nation. So this particular definition was credited to Adam Smith. In other words, Adam Smith simply defines or sees economics as an inquiry into the nature and causes of the wealth of nations. Apart from that, we have another definition given by a classical economist in person of JBC. And according to JBC, economics can be defined as the study of laws which governs wealth. That is, according to JBC, the study of laws that governs wealth is mainly regarded as economics. So in this particular definition, JBC was able to conceive the subject matter of economics as the study of law that mainly governs the wealth of a particular economy over a given period of time. Apart from JBC, we also have a particular view or perspective in terms of definitions of economics being expressed by J.S. Mill, that's John Stuart Mill. And according to J.S. Mill, he perceives economics as that body of knowledge which relates to wealth. That is, economics is the body of knowledge that purely relates to wealth. So that is how the subject matter of economics were being perceived or were being propounded or expressed by a number of classical economists vis-a-vis the Adam Smith, the JBC, as well as J.S. Mill. So all these are some of those views that have been expressed in relation to the subject matter of economics. So all are regarded as the classical views of economics. If you look at these definitions very well, one will see that the definitions basically lack one substance or the other. So as a matter of fact, there's a need to look at some advancements that have actually been introduced into the subject matter of economics. So as a matter of fact, we need to look at another views that have been expressed on the subject matter of economics. So let's look at the neoclassical view of economics. We have the classical view and we have the neoclassical view. So the emergence of neoclassical view of economics is as a result of some of those deficiencies that were attributed to the classical views. Though the classical economics have actually made good attempts in order to define or to give appropriate meanings and definitions of what economics is all about, but some of these definitions have been criticized on various grounds, and this was actually led to the emergence of the classical view. So the classical or neoclassical economists were the immediate successor of classical economists who adopted most of the approaches and techniques of the latter with little modification in some cases. This simply implies that some of those assumptions that underline the classical economists are equally the same assumptions underlining the neoclassical economists. Even some of those scholars that actually make up the neoclassical, they are also part of the classical, but only that they are trying to introduce a number of modifications in the ways and manners they are able to conceive the subject matter of economics. So in their own view, they added one or two modifications so as to make the subject matter of economics to be properly understood by every individual. So one of the definitions here is economics is the study of mankind in the ordinary business of life. If you look at this definition of economics being regarded as the study of mankind in the ordinary business of life, this is a definition that was mainly credited to Alfred Marshall. That is, according to Alfred Marshall, he refers to economics as the study of mankind in the ordinary business of life. And based on this definition, it mainly examines that part of individual and social action which is most closely connected with attainment and with the use of material requisites of the well-being of an individual. So all these are credited to Alfred Marshall, who is regarded as a neoclassical economist. So apart from the classical view and neoclassical view, another category of definition of economics is what we call the scarcity definition. If you look at this particular category of definition very well, it is very important to note that attempts or emphasis has actually been placed on the scarcity definition of economics because of the fact that the definition is more accepted or more acceptable generally among the economists as a result of the fact that it actually adds a number of initiatives, or it majorly introduces a number of other concepts that actually makes the subject of economics to be very interesting in terms of studying. So based on this particular category of the scarcity definition, this embraces the views of Lionel Robbins. In other words, the scarcity definition of economics was being championed by Professor Lord Lionel Robbins as well as his numerous followers. And according to this particular school of thought, the prime focus of economics is the problem of resources that are limited in relation to human wants, which are said to be unlimited. So there are two major issues here. We have the resources and we have the wants or the needs of an individual. So generally, human wants or human needs are said to be unlimited. And this is one of the major reasons why it is generally conceived that human beings are insatiable. The insatiability in human wants or in human being is majorly predicated on the needs or wants of an individual that are not limited in nature. So despite the fact that human beings are insatiable or human wants are unlimited, it is very important to note that there is a relative scarcity in the use of the resources or in allocating resources with which to satisfy the needs and wants of the final consumers. And that is what informed the study of economics, because of the fact that resources are relatively scarce, and apart from that, the human wants or human needs are equally said to be unlimited. So according to the scarcity definition of economics, which was said to be championed by Professor Lionel Robbins, the prime focus of that particular for economics is the problem of resources which are limited in supply, whereas the human wants are said to be unlimited. So let's look at the definition given by Lionel Robbins in relation to the scarcity definition of economics. So according to Lionel Robbins, economics can be defined as the science which studies human behavior as a relationship between ends and scarce means which have alternative uses. So this is the view being expressed by Lionel Robbins as regards the subject matter of economics definition. So he simply refers economics, or he simply refers to economics as the science or social science which mainly studies human behavior as a relationship between ends and scarce means which have alternative uses. So Lionel Robbins was able to buttress further some of the major concepts that characterize the scarcity definition of economics. And as a matter of fact, Lord Robbins' definition of economics actually warrants further explanations due to the fact that there are certain concepts that mainly underline the definition. We have the words an end. An end here refers to wants in terms of goods and services which are needed or required by an individual for the purpose of survival And apart from that, we also have another important word, which is means. And means here refers to the productive resources, which are otherwise known as the factors of production. And these are factors that are being employed in the production process of goods and services, and the purpose of which is to satisfy the needs and wants of the final consumer. So we have looked at the ends as well as the means as those important words that underline the definition of Lionel Robbins as regards the subject matter of economics. So all these factors of production that are traced or traceable to the production process commonly include the land, we have the labor, and we have the capital, and likewise we have the entrepreneur. So the combination of these factor inputs or factors of production usually help to facilitate the direct production process of goods and services, which ultimately help to meet the needs and wants of the final consumer. So this could be in form of goods and other services which are being provided for the purpose of meeting the needs and wants of the final consumer. So this is the definition that was provided by Lord Lionel Robbins, and this definition seems to be generally acceptable because of the fact that it mainly identifies a number of concepts that mainly characterize the subject matter of economics. So apart from the scarcity definition of economics, the other category we have here is that of the working definition of economics. We have the working definition of economics, and the working definition of economics was also credited to Lord Atkinson. So according to Lord Atkinson, economics is basically concerned with the behavior of people and the complexities of people's behavior, which cannot be easily captured in a single definition. Apart from Lords, we also have Professor Richard Lipsey, who also gives appropriate definitions to economics, and he was more forthcoming than any other person in this particular thought. He did not only recognize the logical inconsistencies and other inadequacies of the sentence definition, but also provides a broad definition of economics, which is specifically called a working definition. And according to Lipsey, in an attempt to understand the working definition of economics, it simply refers to economics as a social science, which is basically concerned with the way the society chose to employ the available scarce productive resources in order to achieve certain conditions of living at a particular period of time. So if you look at this definition very well, though it is in some instances very related to the one provided by Lord Lionel Robbins, however, Lipsey was able to conceive the subject of economics as a social science, which is purely concerned with the way the society chose to employ the scarce resources, that is, the way and manner the society is able to allocate the available scarce resources, and the purpose of this is to improve the total welfare of the populace in terms of the standard of living, which will really help us to achieve economic development as well as other macroeconomic goals and objectives. So the way and manner the available scarce resources are being allocated within the society with a view to achieving certain ends in form of economic welfare of the populace actually is centered on the definition provided by Lipsey. So all these are some of the important ways or definitions that have been given by economists over time in order to give appropriate meanings and definitions of what economics is all about. And from all indications, we can simply infer that it is very difficult to give a precise and concise definition to the subject matter of economics. This is due to the fact that it has been viewed from various perspectives, and as a matter of fact, it simply means different things to different people. So that is what informed the various categories upon which the subject matter of economics has been defined. So we have been able to look at the classical view of economics. We also look at the neoclassical. Likewise, the most generally accepted definition of economics, which was said to be the scarcity definition of economics, was also examined. Then finally, the working definitions, as credited to Professor Richard Lipsey, was equally considered. So all this will really help us to have a clear picture or a clear perspective of what economics is all about in terms of its definitions.